Hello everyone, welcome to DynamicsCon March 2022 event. My name is Priyesh Wagh and I am a Dynamics 365 solution architect with CloudFronts in Mumbai, India, and I'm also a Microsoft MVP. So first of all, I'd like to thank every one of you who voted for my session for setting up Project Operations Lite. It has been a pleasure being at DynamicsCon, and today I'm gonna bring you kind of a precursor to one of my past events, that is Project Service Automation. So if I had a lot of questions back then as to what all we need to set up in order to begin using project operations, and at that time I thought, oh yeah, it takes a lot to set project operations light deployment, just because it's a little different from what you are used to setting up in terms of trial, like let's say Dynamics 365 sales or even field service. So in this session today, my agenda is to simplify these steps for you as to how you can first sign up for project operations, the light type of deployment, and how all prerequisites in terms of your organization data is what you need to set. So this will be a two-part session. One is setting up the environment, and the next would be to set up your organization data, which you will continue to leverage in your project operations journey. So let's begin. First of all, if you want to create a trial for Project Operations Lite, first of all, I'll also talk about what the different types of deployments are, but I will keep on sprinkling some thoughts over time to time as I go along. So let's first start by signing up for the environment, and just like you sign up for other D365 trials, let me quickly brief you about the licensing prices here. If you want to purchase full licenses for Dynamics 365 project operations, it's a $120 per user per month license, and if you are starting a trial, it is a 1 month trial for one user, so you just get one license in the trial. But if you want to purchase full licenses, you have to commit to 20-seat full user licenses. For the purpose of this demo, what I have done is I've set up a Project Operations Lite trial environment for you. So I've got one license with me, and based on that license I have set up my environment, which I'll walk you through all the setups, all the data that I have set up into the environment, and also I'll walk you through how to go about that, right? So if you remember, if you have signed up for other Dynamics 365 trial environments before, trials.dynamics.com, and it would redirect you to this page, and if you scroll down further to the finance and operations part, you would find the Dynamics 365 project operations try for free button. Means you can just sign up for a free trial right away. So let's say you click on the try for free. You'll, like any other Dynamics 365 environment, you'll get to enter your details. So here you can enter completely new email address. That is fine, because what this first step does is it kind of sends an email as a confirmation that hey, you have signed up for this trial. In my case, I've just entered an email which doesn't exist, so I've just put it there, which is fine because I not necessarily need to read through all the what I'm signing up for. That's fine for a trial purpose. But if you already have an email address with you where you want to receive all this communication, it is recommended that you enter that address. So I've entered an email address here, and when I click next, it detected that the email address, I need to create a new account for that, right? So they're gonna give me a Dynamics 365 Project Operations CE preview trial license, and I'm gonna create a new account for that. So when I click on create new account, I can enter the details. Usually, since I'm doing this for an organization, instead of writing my name, I'll put CRM admin, and I'll enter the business phone number and what my Dynamics example company should be called. So let's say I'm just calling it DynamicsCon PO, and I'm just entering some high level details, and I'm proceeding with that. So based on that, I also want to receive an OTP on that, so that I can authorize the trial creation process. So since I'm in India, I'll enter my phone and I get a verification code, and once I get a verification code, I'll just enter that in and click verify. And finally, as I'm the only first and the only user to use this trial, I can check what all username I need to set. So I've selected this username. CRM admin is kind of standard. and I've entered some password for it, right? So I'll just click next. So what happens is, on the final step, you are just ready to get started. So once you see all the information that you see on screen and feel that yeah, that is correct, and now you need to start setting up your Dynamics 365 project operations, you can click on get started. So what it will do is it will take you to a new window and it will present you with a questionnaire. Now before I dig a little deep into this questionnaire, I'll tell you what the questionnaire is about, taking you through the steps, and as I go along I'll also walk you through what all steps are there, or what are three different types of deployments are there, right? But the one that we are gonna end up creating is a Project Operations Lite, meaning this doesn't involve the finance and operations part or the revenue recognition part, but this just remains in the customer engagement apps side of things, right? So the first question is, do you require a way to manage opportunities and move through the process as they become contracts? Yes, I do. So I'll select yes, and then I proceed accordingly. Then I'm asked that do you require advanced or extensible resource management and detailed bottom-up project planning. So yes, I'll say yes in this case. Next is, do you require workflow for the approval of time and expenses? Yes, there is an advanced approval process to this as well, so I'll just select yes. And next I have, do you require the financials and advanced expense management? Now since I don't want to do detailed finance expenses which are part of the finance and operation function, like or the OCR part, so I'll say no. Then further, do you consume non-stocked materials on your project? So I'm not gonna track any non-stocked materials on my project, so I'm just gonna say no, and then I'm gonna proceed. Then do you consume a stocked materials projects? No, since for example I'm a professional services company, I don't want to track any stocked materials on the project, so that has to deal anything with D365 supply chain management, or that has anything to do with any advanced platforms like finance and operations. So again I'll select no. Based on the questionnaire, what I will be presented with is the recommended selection for the type of deployment I am doing, right? And it has already highlighted the light deployment, meaning my Dynamics 365 project operations will take me from sales to pro forma invoicing. Pro forma invoicing means it is not the final invoice without the it's an invoice without the taxation or the actual revenue that is to be recognized. If let's say your deployment is kind of one of the other scenarios that connects to finance and operations piece, that is when you select the either of the other two options, and in that case what happens is your pro forma invoice, once you confirm the kind of invoice, it goes over to the finance and operation module, where all the taxation and other revenue items could be added and enriched, right? So hence in this case, based on the answers that we've put in, it is recommending that we end up creating a light type of deployment for project operations. So I just click on begin setup. Let's say for example just how you create D365 sales environment. In Power Platform Admin Center, your environment starts to provision, so it takes a few minutes, couple of minutes I think, to provision your environment. And once it is ready, just like any other Dynamics 365 CRM or Dataverse environments, it will be available in the list of environments. And once that happens, the first thing you do is start setting up your organization, meaning your environment is ready. If you want to change the URL of the environment or change the name of the organization, that is fine. Those are all Power Platform admin related things, but given that that is taken care of, I will now proceed towards doing the organization setup. Let me walk you through what all will be covered in the configuration part, and what all I'm gonna set up for the Project Operations Lite to run in an MVP mode, meaning as a minimum viable product that I can at least create, start using the sales cycle, create a project, book resources on them, book let the resources do time entries, expense entries, and let the project managers create invoices out of, or let the accounting team create invoice out of the project contracts. So in order for this light type of deployment process, that is sales to pro forma, in order to make all these things work, I need to set up these minimum configuration items. Though apart from that, there are a lot of other items that need to be taken care of, but these are the bare minimum things that you can at least set up and start using your Dynamics 365 project operations, right? So with this, I'm gonna switch over to my environment, and as you can see, I'm already logged into my environment. Before I start to dive into the configuration aspect of it, let me take you to the since this is a trial, let me take you to the Office 365 part. So I'm just gonna show you what kind of license we get. So while this is loading, I also have the Power Platform Admin Center open, and what I already did was I just kind of clicked on edit and I changed the URL as to what it was suitable. Otherwise you'll be given a default org URL which is not usually favorable, right? So you can just click on edit, and you can change the URL and the name of the organization if that is what suits your needs, right? So let's say you go to the M365 Admin Center. Under licenses, no, under billing, you can click on licenses and just look at what type of trial license you get. So you'll get a one user license which is assigned to the user I created. So that is the D365 project operations preview license, right? So and you just get, so as I just provisioned this environment, it automatically got assigned to me, and that's about it. So so that's my M365 setup. That's how it looks like. And then now I can go into the project operations part. In case you already have an environment and you've installed project operations on it, or if you install other modules with project operations, in your apps screen you will see the project operations environment here, and what you can do, and you can just select this, right? So this is the app that takes care of the project operations, and it has everything from settings to all the usable modules in project operations. So there's no separate module for settings. In fact, all your settings are within this module itself. So as you can see on my screen, you have project, resources, sales, settings, and training. So most of the organization settings part are in the settings area here or on the resources side. So from the list, if we see the resource role and resources, those are all part of the resources, and the organization unit and the project and the sales price list are all part of the settings area. So I'll go back to my session. Let's start by going to the settings area, and the first thing that you do is set up the organization unit. So let me define what organization unit is. Organization unit is, for example, you are a professional services company, you are spread globally. Geographically, you are divided into different locations, and in order to set your operations in the context of that region, let's say there could be different currency or different price lists and everything, these are defined by organization units. Since this is a trial, I already have a lot of sample organization units already populated, so I'll just pick one of them which is default, and I've just renamed it to DynamicCon PO default, right? So this is my organization unit. So in organization or in finance terms, this is the business entity. So DynamicCon PO default is the business entity that I'm going to use, and this will be related to two things. First is it gets attached with a cost price list, and it will then reference sales price list as I move along the sales module to work on my projects, right? So because this default organization unit is using the currency US dollar, because my primary business unit is based in US and hence the currency is US dollar, I will assign or I will attach a cost price list to it. So I can't attach a sales price list here, so what I will do is I'll attach a cost price list here, right? So if I go into this cost price list, it will have the roles which I will be using while working on project operations. So this is the price list. If you've used Dynamics 365 sales before, there are lesser items in the sales price list, but because this is project operations, which is also how the price list is common to field service and customer service, the main part that you define here are the role prices, right? So in my cost price list, let's say my resourcing unit is DynamicCon PO default, so I'll just filter out that DynamicCon default, and I'm using two roles in this example. One is a developer and one is a project manager. So I have set some role prices to it, and these will be my cost prices. Next, I also have a sales price list to it, but before we move on to the sales price list from cost price list, let me also tell you how you can define the roles, right? So moving away from the cost price list, because I went into the price list from the organization unit, I'm ending up here on the sales part. But let's say I'll show you the price lists first. This price list is what we associated with our organization unit because it is a cost price list, and it's the bill price list, or the sales price list is US bill rates. So all that I want to use as a bill price list is here, hence the rates in the bill price list is different, and this bill price list will be referenced in the lead opportunity quote on my project as well, so that all the actuals and all the costs expenses that are incurred in the project will be derived from this price list. So again, I can just filter and I can select a default one and see that I have different bill rates, right? So now I've put the organization unit in place. The cost price list is associated to the organization unit. I have a separate bill price list which I will be using when I move through the sales cycle. Now I will talk about roles. So roles are the resource role, like you have your professional organizations, service company, you have different roles for all the users who are going to be using project operations, be it for billing or be it for managing the project or making time entries and all of that, right? So in resources part, I have roles here. So again, internally they're related entities, but I have list of all the roles. Role entity is called as resource categories in project operations. So I can define all the resource categories, and then I can also decide if that particular role that I want to use is chargeable or not. So let's say developer is one of the roles that I've used in the price list, and here I can define that yeah, this particular role should be chargeable. Similarly, the project manager role, which is the other role used in our price list, that is also chargeable, right? So I can use both these roles and add prices in both my price list, right? So at this point, my organization unit, price lists, and role prices are set in the organization, right? Let's move to the next part. So again, I am back to the settings. So on a very high level, my organization unit, role prices, price list are set up with the roles. Now the next part is to create resources. Let us revisit the PPT. So resource roles, organization unit with the cost price list and the sales price list. We also saw the role prices. Let me also talk about the transaction category and then the resources part. So there are three things in the resources part. One is the work hours for your user, one is the calendar template, one is the how you set those calendar templates to the different resources, and what is project in M365, right? So let me go back to my organization. I was in the cost price list, and what I added were resource roles. That is the what will be the chargeability of the resources who are going to work on it. But let's say the resources are going to work, for example, on the context of time, meaning their hourly efforts will be measured. But let's say you want to incur different type of expenses like airfare, or there's a different transaction category altogether. So all the transaction categories are entered here. So some of the predefined ones that come with project operations are airfare, car rental, fee, gift. So if you want to incur any of those costs in your project, and if you want to add them to the price list as well, so that's, I'll show you where that goes. So if you again go to the sales, and you again go to the price list, and again let me open up the bill price list. Alright, so these are my US bill rates is the billing price list. So I'll open that up, and under category prices I can add each of those transaction categories as to how I want to calculate these. Or let's say if I added airfare, right? If you want to add this cost to your invoice, should there be any fixed cost or any percentage, you can add those. So I'll just show you what are the different transaction categories that you can add, and this can vary from price list to price list, right? For some projects you might end up using just whatever the cost is at the time, or some, if you want to say like you're offering some premier support, so you can end up having that, and if that has to be a fixed price, you can then select should it be at a fixed price using price per unit, or at cost, meaning when you enter those expenses you can mention there, or some markup percentage, right? So let's say some miscellaneous costs, okay. And then we can define as to what price you want. So let's say there is some miscellaneous cost you want to add, and that has to be at a $500. You can add and save that. Oh yeah, that already exists. So yeah, so I'll not add, most of them are already added. So you can then mix it up and change based on the price list you are using, right? Okay, so now let's go to these were the transaction categories, these were the price lists, the role prices we have added to the price lists, and what organization unit, right? So now let's talk about resources. So resources are the users who's gonna use Project Operations Lite for entering time, or scheduling, or managing the project, or just handling the sales cycle and everything. So these are all the sample data that I've entered. Let's say I'll go to my user. If there are licensed user using Project Operations, the resource type could be user. So because I just have one license for a trial, I've entered myself, and whatever CRM admin I created, I just renamed it to my username. Then I have a time zone and everything, and this is my bookable resource. So all the resources who need to be booked on the projects, they are called as bookable resources, right? But now bookable resources, just because they are users who gonna use, and they are the ones who will be scheduled on the projects, they have to have their own work timings, right? Depending on which location or which region they're in, they need to be assigned a particular time zone or working hours. How many hours do they work? Do they work on weekends or not? And all of that. So this process is a little tricky. So how this goes is in a sequence. So first they go, let's say you set up a new organization, right? I've created an organization. CRM admin is the main user. So what I can do is, if you remember the old settings area, by the time future updates come in, the settings area will change. But if you can better relate to the old settings area, I'll go there and I'll kind of walk you through that, right? So first thing is to set the work hours for one default user. Then there is a second concept called as calendar templates, which I'll talk about after this piece. And the third is you can then select a bunch of resources and set those calendar templates to those resources. Meaning, let's say I am preparing a schedule that I don't want to work on weekends, but on Monday through Friday, my timing should be 8 to 5 p.m. in this time zone, with an added break or not, or if I have to observe any business closures or not, that will be taken care of. If I go to security, then I go to users. I'll open up the same user that I signed up the trial with. So what I'm gonna do is, when the user shows up, I'm gonna set its work hours, and this is the old way of doing things. So this is the user, and if you remember from the old navigation pane, whenever the old records open, the related section or the child records are shown by a little arrow here. So this is the user. So I'm gonna go to the work hours. I've clicked on this little arrow, and when I clicked on work hours, what I set here for the first time, so this is a calendar template, right? For the purpose of this demo, I've already set the work hours from 1st of February from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. But let's say if you set up a new schedule here by clicking on the new weekly schedule on a user, I can set these parameters. Yeah, so I get a chance to whether they should be working, selecting what all days they should be working, or if I want to kind of observe any business closures or not, and what time zone should this belong to, right? So I can set the work hours and everything here. I won't do it right away because then again it will change things. So this is when you set. So once you set this for one user, then you can go back to your project operations piece, and then you can go to settings, and then you can see something called as calendar templates. So calendar templates comes with one default calendar template, meaning that calendar template can be applied to a project and resources, right? Because let's say a project is in a different region and you want to schedule resources on them, that can happen as well. But let's say if you want to apply those to users, and which have to be scheduled on the schedule board, you can select those. There is this default calendar work template. If you don't apply any calendar template to any resource, what will happen is the default 9 to 5 which already comes with project operations, that will be set. But if you want to create your own, you can click on new, and a new calendar work hours template will be created, right? So now I have set the work hour template, and I'm just referring to this user. This is again a bookable resource, right? So let's say I've added this user template resource. Now if I go to the reason I had set the hours on the user is because after I set the hours on the system user, I have created a bookable resource, right? The bookable resource is this one. So if I click on it, the bookable resource is this, which is referencing to my user. And the reason I selected this bookable resource as a template resource for the new calendar schedule is so that reference that user's work hours to create this work template, right? So let's say I set some hours for that resource on the user level. I created a bookable resource, and now I'm using that bookable resource to create a work template. So my work template will kind of reference what the hours were, and these calendar templates I can then go and apply to other resources. So let's say if I go to settings and if I go to the resources, because now next step is to set the calendar templates for the users, I can do that. Let's say any one user, I select Cherry, and again, this is if you go inside a bookable resource, you won't be able to set that because there's no button to kind of set calendars here. You can only show work hours here. So I'll just this has to be done from the main screen, right? So on the main view, on the bookable resource view, I can, let's say, select this resource Cherry, and once a resource is selected on the bookable resource view, the set calendar button will appear for you. So let's say you select set calendar, whatever calendar template I had created, that you can select, meaning that I had created a different support shift hours. It's a smaller shift I had created, and let's say if I apply this to Cherry, so I've applied these work hours. Now if I go into this resource and if I look at the work hours based on the Pacific time, it will, because I'm in India, so my personal settings will have a different view of the hours, but this is a 4-hour work hour template that I have applied. So the shorter 4-hour work template is applied from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. right? So if you want to set your resources who are in different geographical regions, you can create different work hour templates for them and apply those calendars onto the bookable resources. Hence, when they appear on schedule board, their available time will be shown according to that, as to when are they available to be booked. Are they available on weekends or not, or how many hours, or if they have any lunch break in between, or if there's any holiday in a different region and whatnot. So let's say you go on the schedule board. So again, if you're familiar to using project field service, and if you've used project service automation in the past, which is the previous version of project operations, if you're familiar to the schedule board, you will know that the resources which are available here, how they are shown on the schedule board based on the hours view or the days view and whatnot. So let me look for the user. So the sample user Cherry is now available from 9 a.m. in the morning to 12 p.m. based on the work hour template that I set for this user, right? So let's take a look at the settings. Let me just summarize what I've covered so far. There are more settings, but I'll just kind of cover them on a higher level. So expense categories is a subset of transaction categories. What it does is, if you want to record any expenses, you can set different expense categories. There are invoice frequencies. Let's say you started in the sales cycle, you can set it from a schedule basis. Like let's say if it's a fixed price project, and if you want to bill monthly, or if you want to generate invoices monthly, you can create different invoice frequencies and then set what the frequency should be, right? So this is just an example. Bi-monthly, this was a sample data available. So let's say this bi-monthly is it runs for 2 days in a month, like it runs twice in a month, weekday of the period, and then you can add more details as to what the frequency is. like first and last. So you can start defining these. You can have weekly as well. So let's say if you just changes to runs only once, uh, so that you can set your frequency to now all the new contracts which will have an invoice schedule in them, to just create invoice on the first Monday of each month, right? So these are invoice frequencies. And again, if you want to create recurring invoices, that all setups are also there, which work as system jobs. But again, these are more advanced settings, so to say, and that's something I'm not covering at this point. But again, the settings that I just showed are the bare minimums which you can start setting up in your new Dynamics 365 trial if you're new to project operations, and then you can start using the sales process. I know just talking about settings is, even though there are a lot of settings to cover in one session, but with these settings, what all you will be able to achieve, I'll just quickly walk you through on a higher level, right? So let's say that you're starting with lead. There is a new customer you have, who's a coffee company maybe, and you want to, let's say, as a project service organization, you want to deploy D365 for them. You can create leads and then move on to qualify the lead, and then let's say if I click on the leads which I qualified a while ago, and I'll just talk about where all the settings I created were used, right? So the reason I am going into a bit of sales cycle is just to show you where all those settings start to map when you create your first project. So let's say I started with a lead. I kind of qualified this lead into an opportunity. So if I go in the develop stage, the lead got qualified into an opportunity, and let's say even if I don't enrich the opportunity right away, that is also fine. The inception point of the actual data, or when the actual things start to come together, is in quotes. Although I can choose to select all the contracting unit, what price list I want to use, what's the budget and all in the opportunity, but opportunity is probably not the best place to know everything about the project. And when I really start to populate the project is in the quotes part. So let's say I got started with this opportunity from the leads. The opportunity now has a quote on it. I'm kind of adding two types of lines to it. One is the material type. So then I also have a project attached to it. So all the resource and all those could be assigned in a project as well, right? And all the price list, all the transaction categories, role prices that you saw, they all go in the project price list. So whatever I added in the price list, and I have created a project price list. I've attached a project price list to this quote, and all the rates and everything that you defined so far will get added to the project price list. So all my role prices, if I have a different pricing for this, yeah, first I'll just show you the role prices. Yeah, so all my prices and everything are attached here, and so on. I'll go to the project, because there is one last point in my slide which I'm going to talk about, project in M365. So let me take you through what that was. Let's say you're opening project operations for the first time, and you're trying to access a project that you created, and if you come to the task view, it might fail for you the first time, right? It will show that it's not connected to the internet or something like that, just like a dinosaur that you see on Chrome. But that is because there's one small step that you need to do, is initiate project.microsoft.com once in your tenant. So when you log into this project.microsoft.com for the very first time and it authenticates your user, that is when this connection is properly established. And once, let's say, you get to see this page in your project.microsoft.com, you can go back to your project and then just hit refresh. So once you just refresh the whole page, then your tasks and board and everything will be shown, and that is where you kind of complete the whole circle by setting up the basic data in project operations Lite type of deployment. So these are all the bare minimum configuration steps we walked through, right from creating a trial to setting all the organization data in there. Apart from what I showed today, there is a lot that you can set up, and project operations has tremendous capacity to handle the project management needs at your end. And I hope this session was useful, and if there were any gaps in trying to get around with setting up project operations Lite, I hope this session did answer those questions. There will be a Q&A session right now, and I'm gonna answer your questions in this. Again, thank you all for joining my session at DynamicsCon for March 2022, and I hope you have a great time here. Thank you. I hope you had a great session and you learned something new on setting up Dynamics 365 project operations. Thank you for attending today. I'd like to thank everyone who's voted for my session. I'm waiting for the sessions to show up. I'm waiting for the questions to show up so that I can start answering them. And while you put in your questions, quick few updates from my end is that the transitioning of project service automation, that is PSA, to project operations, that has started. It will be happening in two phases. One phase, um, it's already out, but I'm still waiting for some more information in order to confirm how to go about that. So that's one of the recent updates that I'll be putting out on my social handles. Maybe I'll blog about it. Maybe there will be some session on it in the near future. So what I presented today was just the initial steps you need to understand of how you can set up project operations and what are all the different parameters that you need to set up. It might get a little overwhelming right in the beginning, trying to understand what the terms are. I try to cover those in this session, but yes, of course, feel free to um, reach me out on my social handles. You can search me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. Do you have any questions yet? I'm just looking at the chat right now. I think there might be a slight delay, so there might be questions coming in. All right. Okay. Okay. So, and another thing about project operations light type of deployment is that currently you get one trial license, um, and it lasts for 30 days. I'm also looking out for any further updates on that on how that will change, so that you can have more users. So I'm awaiting those updates as well. And so I've been exploring Project Operations Lite recently, and what I like about it the most, which I didn't cover in this session, is all the new features that have come up, like not to exceed limit. And this was something that I covered back in September 2021's DynamicsCon, and that session back then was about have using project operations from sales to pro forma invoicing firsthand, right? And during right after those sessions, after that session in September, I got a lot of questions on how do we go about setting up Project Operations Lite. So this session today was because of that, and to try to get to a point where you can start moving from sales to pro forma invoice, and to be able to do that, what you need to do to set up. So this session was around that, and I hope this session was useful for you. Okay. Oh, I see a lot of questions. One second. So yeah, my opinion on how well project operations handles resource management or planning. I think it handles it really well. The way it currently handles is, I think, what most applications need, um, on allocating resources on different projects, on tasks, even on custom tables. So in my implementation history so far, it hasn't had any problems though. And yeah, resources are managed pretty well. Like will the product operation pricing be available, and if that will mean no minimum using limit. So I'm on a lookout for that information as well. So if project operations pricing is available, yeah. So currently it is 20 user limit. So I'm waiting for updates if this limit ever is removed. then I think then we'll have, you know, more and more customers can be onboarded with them without the minimum limit. So that would be a good sign. So yeah, again, once I have that info, I'll pass it on. Uh, Pamela asks, when going to the task screen on a project, I get an error or refused of connect. Yes, so that was one of, yeah, yes, of course, Pamela, you can ping me on LinkedIn. But just during the closing minutes of my session, I pointed out one thing, that if you see this error, you just have to, and when you come back to your actual tasks window and you refresh your window, you will then be able to access the project task. So that was one of the last point. Uh, Okay, so another question is from Michelle. Uh, can you have different price associated with the same resources based on the project? For example, one time a PM could be charged and the next time the PM is non-chargeable. Also, one person's rate could be 100, but after more resources are loaded on the project, the prices rate would go down like quantity discount. So there are different ways to set up the pricing for this. Yes, of course, resources can be priced differently for different projects. So that is one thing. The prices are not set at the resource level; they are set at the project level. And in let's say in different projects, the resources could be um, chargeable. Their roles could be chargeable, and in some other uh, projects, the same resource with the same role could be non-chargeable as well. So it depends on it all starts to appear when they let's say if it's a TNM project, if they enter time, that could be non-chargeable. So there are again some more settings to be able to do that. And I think that's a good question. So I think I'll come up with something that illustrates this example or this scenario in a better way. But yeah, it is possible. Lead. So I hope, Michelle, that answers the question. Then Marcus asks, you showed the lead to opportunity process in the sales module. Does the use of dynamic sales application make sense if you use the project operations app? So dynamic sales application focuses on whole other features which project operations does not, like sales insight and customer insights. And the D365 sales application is kind of designed for that. The way, of course, because there are common entities, it feels like we are kind of going in a redundant process of entering data here. But if you're more into using the customer insights and yeah, customer insights with D365 sales, then then that will be more useful. But if your intent of sales is eventually doing just project operations, then just project operations would be enough in that case. So all right. So Michelle, again, what version of project is that? The project for the web, V3 for. I'm not sure on the version. I haven't checked that yet. But yeah, of course, I'll reach out to you and I'll check what version that was. So yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry, if it was V3 or V5. Uh, 3 tier licenses. Okay. Anil had asked a question on the minimum license limit, and to which Tonya responded that Tonya purchased 3 PO Lite licenses using the regular SKU in NCE, so it doesn't look like they're enforcing the minimum users. Okay, so that's an interesting fact there. So we'll cross-check that on how we can get up to how we can bypass that 20 user limit. Um, was that the last question? Yeah. Hmm. Thanks, Mario. Pamela, okay. So let me go back to Pamela's question. I think my audio might have been cut. Mm. Yeah, so Pamela, the Pamela's question was regarding the project tasks not showing and it showing a disconnected internet error. That is because what project operations in the initial setup it needs is when you're running it for the first time, it's that you need to open a new tab and then you need to enter project.microsoft.com. You mean you need to load project for the web once, for the first time. It takes about a minute. Once it loads completely on the new tab, you can come back to the tab where you had the project on, and you can refresh that page of your project in project operations, and then your project operations tasks will start to load up correctly. Then it will start to function up correctly. Uh, in days or in way. So Ed has a question. Project use duration in days, resources be booked in days, or is it all way hours? So there is this schedule board, which is like I hadn't shown it as a part of the project operations like setup. But one of my previous sessions, I showed how you can schedule on the schedule board, schedule the resources on the schedule board. Yeah, there if you switch the view to the days view, and if you drag from one day to other, let's say from Monday to Thursday, you can enter them. You can enter. So once you start to book, there is an option called as full capacity. So you just have to enter full capacity in the type of booking, and then just click on book. So what it will do is it will consider the number of days you have selected on the schedule board, and whatever the full capacity will be set based on the work hours you had set for those resources. You will be able to book them in days. But yeah, booking someone in days meaning it's given that you've already set work hour templates for those resources. Okay. Um, I hope, Ed, that I answers your question, and I hope everyone else's questions are also answered. Um, yeah, thanks, Pamela. I hope that answered the question. I'm looking if there are any more questions, guys. Um, yes, pay when paid support for resource based on non-stock scenarios. Yeah, thanks, Anil. So yes, this is one of the recent updates that I saw, but I haven't dug deep into those features yet. So yeah, I'll come up with something that explain all these Wave 1 2022 features as well. Uh, Thank you, Susan. Yes, yes, Susan, thanks. Yes, I will be regularly posting about project operations in the near future. Hopefully by the end of this month, early next month, as we start seeing Wave 1 2022 features rolling out. So I think that would be the best time to bring all these features into experimentation and posting about it. Um, so are there any more questions? Uh, yeah, thanks, Ed. Thanks, Pamela. Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Anil. All right, so we'll wait another few minutes. Um, yeah. So again, I saw lovely questions posted today, and that kind of reminded me that, oh yeah, there's still a lot way to go post setting up project operations. There are a lot of features that have to be explored, and this is the beginning of working on um, project operations Lite, and all these questions really you know um, help me look at different scenarios that all of you have put out. So it has been a great session. I hope you did take something back from these sessions, and feel free to reach out to me on my LinkedIn. Look at look at our website cloudfriends.com, and I'll promise I'll come up with more such content. Then Michelle had another question. When a sales quote is done, does that start pricing on the project, or is that a separate? Okay. Uh, when a sales quote is done, does that start the pricing on the project, or is that a separate? So there are once a sale quote is done, a project contract is created, Michelle. Once a project contract is created, if it's a fixed price project, there is a schedule of invoices that are generated when the accounting team will ready that schedule of that invoice as ready to invoice. And when you create an invoice, that schedule will be considered. And if it's a time and material type of a project, based on the time entries, based on the cost setup, uh, and when the time entries are approved by the project approver, uh, there is actual records that are created behind the project. So actual is the table, is the entity, and those denote how many hours or how much billing is done on that project. Yeah. Yeah, so that's that, Michelle. So pricing is pricing comes up on the project when the time entries are approved and with the actuals are created. Um, yes, so I think we are just about finishing done with the session. Michelle, do you have a blog? I miss. Yes, Michelle, I do have a blog. Yes, thanks, Anil. So, yeah, so that is my blog, and yes, I'll keep on posting more content. I hope again, this answered all the questions. Again, this is lovely to see all the questions, and I hope this was helpful. So, thank you again for joining today at the DynamicsCon, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of all the superb sessions that are in the DynamicsCon March 22 event. Again, take care, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, or good night based on wherever you are. And I hope to see you in the next one.